Admiral Kang Taesung stood on the bridge of his warship, watching the endless darkness of space through the main window. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray hair at his temples. For 20 years, he had served the Galactic Dominion faithfully. He had fought their wars. He had followed their orders. He had tried to forget that he was human in a galaxy that saw humans as nothing more than useful servants. The alarm changed everything. "Sir, we have an unknown vessel entering Imperial space," his sensor officer reported. The young alien's 4 eyes blinked rapidly with confusion. "The signature is impossible." Taesung walked to the sensor station and looked at the readings himself. His heart stopped. The ship's identification code was 300 years old. It belonged to the Earth exploration vessel Dawn of Korea, a ship that had vanished into the void regions when his great-grandmother was a young scientist aboard it. "That ship is dead," Taesung whispered. "Everyone on it is dead. Sir, the ship is very much alive, and it is heading directly for the Imperial capital." Taesung grabbed the communication device and contacted Imperial Command. Within minutes, the entire Dominion Navy was on alert. A ghost had returned from the forbidden regions of space, and no one knew what it wanted. The Dawn of Korea dropped out of fold space near the capital planet 3 hours later. Taesung was there with a fleet of 50 warships, waiting. But when he saw the returned vessel, he understood that his 50 ships meant nothing. The Dawn of Korea had changed. The old exploration ship was now covered in strange crystal structures that glowed with soft blue light. The hull seemed to shift and move like something alive. Energy readings were off every scale his instruments could measure. His science officers simply stared at her screens and said nothing, because there were no words for what she was seeing. "This is Admiral Kang Taesung of the Imperial Navy," he broadcast on all channels. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself and state your purpose." The response came in perfect Korean, a language Taesung had only heard from his grandmother as a child. "Admiral Kang, this is Captain Park Han-ah of the Earth vessel Dawn of Korea. We have returned from the void regions. We mean no harm. We bring gifts for humanity and for the galaxy." The voice was calm and warm, like a mother speaking to a worried child. Taesung felt something strange in his chest. Hope, perhaps, or fear. He could not tell the difference. "Captain Park, you have entered Imperial space without permission. You have violated 17 Dominion laws. Emperor Vexal demands an explanation." There was a soft laugh on the other end. "The Emperor may demand whatever he wishes. We will speak with him. But first, Admiral, I think you should come aboard. There is someone here who wants to meet you." Against all military protocol, against every instinct that told him this was dangerous, Taesung took a shuttle to the crystal-covered ship. When he stepped through the airlock, he entered a world that should not exist. The inside of the ship was bigger than the outside. Much bigger. He walked through gardens filled with plants he did not recognize, past buildings that seemed to float in midair, through spaces that bent in directions his eyes could not follow. Children ran past him, laughing and playing. They looked human, but there was something in their eyes, a depth of knowledge that no child should have. Captain Park Hana met him in a room that looked like an ancient Korean palace. She was a young woman, no older than 30, with kind eyes and black hair tied back simply. She wore a uniform that mixed old Earth military style with something alien and beautiful. "Welcome aboard, Admiral," she said, bowing slightly in the old Korean way. "I know this is strange for you. It was strange for us too, at first. How is this possible?" Taesung asked. His voice was shaking. "Your ship left 300 years ago. You should be dead. Everyone should be dead." Hana smiled. "We found something in the void, Admiral. Something wonderful. Something that changed everything." She gestured to an old man sitting in a chair by the window. but I think he can explain better than I can." The old man stood slowly. He looked about 70 years old, with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. But his eyes were sharp and bright. When he smiled, Tae-sung felt his legs go weak. "Hello, great-grandson," the old man said. "My name is Kim Dong-ho. I served as a pilot on this ship when we left Earth. Your great-grandmother, my dear friend Sun-yi, spoke of you before she passed. She always believed we would return." Tae-sung could not speak. This was impossible. This man should be dust and memory, not standing before him, alive and smiling. "I know you have questions," Dong-ho continued. "Everyone does. The Empire will have questions too. They will be afraid of what we have become. That is natural. We were afraid too when we first discovered what waited for us in the void. What did you find?" Tae-sung finally managed to ask. The old man and the young captain exchanged a look. In that moment, Tae-sung saw something pass between them, a shared knowledge so vast and deep that he could barely glimpse its edges. "We found teachers," Hana said simply. "Very old teachers. And they taught us everything." Outside the palace window, Tae-sung could see the Imperial fleet waiting. He could see the capital planet of the Dominion, home to the Emperor, who had ruled humanity as servants for 800 years. He could see the galaxy that had always told humans they were small and weak and meant to serve. And he understood, with sudden and terrible clarity, that the galaxy was about to learn how wrong it had been. "The Emperor will want to meet you," Tae-sung said. Hana nodded. "Yes, he will. And we will meet him. We have much to discuss about humanity's future." She looked down at the stars with eyes that seemed to hold the light of 1,000 suns. "The servants are coming home, Admiral. And we bring gifts that will change everything." The Imperial Science Council arrived at the dawn of Korea with their finest instruments and their greatest minds. Chief Examiner Mulvith led the team personally. He was an ancient creature with gray skin and 6 arms, and he had studied alien technology for 400 years. He had seen wonders from across the galaxy. He believed there was nothing left that could surprise him. He was wrong. The moment Mulvith stepped aboard the human vessel, his instruments died. Every sensor, every scanner, every device simply stopped working. He held up his primary analysis tool and watched the screen go dark. "What is happening?" he demanded. "What have you done to our equipment?" Captain Park Hana walked beside him with a patient smile. "We have done nothing. Your instruments are trying to measure things they cannot understand. They are not broken. They are simply overwhelmed." Mulvith did not like this answer. He had examined thousands of alien ships. He had unlocked the secrets of civilizations that died before his species learned to walk. No human technology should be beyond his understanding. Humans were servants. Humans were simple. Humans built things that the Empire could always take apart and improve. But as he walked deeper into the ship, Mulvith began to feel something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. The corridors did not follow normal geometry. He would walk in a straight line and end up where he started. He would climb stairs and find himself on the same floor. Rooms existed inside other rooms, spaces folded into spaces, all of it impossible according to every law of physics he knew. "How big is this vessel?" he asked, his voice smaller than before. "From the outside, it is 1 kilometer long," Hana replied. "From the inside, it is approximately the size of a small moon." Mulvith stopped walking. His 6 arms hung limp at his sides. "That is not possible, and yet, here we are." They entered a vast chamber filled with gardens and sunlight. Mulvith looked up and saw a sun, an actual sun, burning in the ceiling of the ship. Children ran through the grass, playing games and laughing. Old men and women sat under trees, reading books or talking quietly. It looked like a peaceful village on any world. Except this village existed inside a ship that floated in space. A young woman approached them. Her name was Lieutenant Shin Biora, and she looked no older than 25. She had short hair and a friendly face, and she moved with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly how powerful she was. "Chief Examiner," she said, "would you like to see something interesting?" Before Molvith could answer, Biora raised her hand. A flower appeared in her palm, growing from nothing, blooming in seconds. Then it turned to crystal, then to light. Then it vanished completely. Matter to energy to information to nothing, Biora said cheerfully. "We learned this in our first year of training. The children can do it too." One of Molvith's officers, a young soldier named Vex, pulled out his weapon. His hands were shaking. "This is wrong," he shouted. "This is dangerous. These humans are dangerous." He fired. The energy bolt left his weapon and traveled toward Biora, but it never reached her. Time simply stopped. The bolt hung in the air, frozen like a painting. Molvith could not move. He could not breathe. He could not even blink. Only the humans moved. Hana walked to the frozen bolt and plucked it from the air like picking fruit from a tree. She examined it for a moment, then let it dissolve into dust. "Lieutenant Shin," Hana said calmly, "please restore time for our guests." Biora nodded, and suddenly Molvith could move again. He gasped for air. His hearts were beating so fast he thought they might burst. "We could have let that bolt hit her," Hana explained. "It would have done nothing. Lieutenant Shin's body exists partially outside normal space. Physical weapons cannot touch her. But we thought a demonstration of temporal control would be more educational." "You stopped time," Molvith whispered. "You stopped time itself. Only locally. Only for a few seconds. Our elders can do much more." Hana gestured toward the gardens. "Would you like to meet one of them?" Dr. Yoon Ji-woo was one of the original scientists on this ship. She has been waiting to explain what we found in the void. Dr. Yoon was an old woman with white hair and gentle hands. She looked like someone's grandmother, kind and patient. But when she spoke, her words carried the weight of centuries. "We were afraid when we first entered the void," she told Molvith. "We thought we would die there. The void is empty, you see. No stars, no planets. Nothing but darkness for light years in every direction. But the darkness was not empty. It was waiting. Waiting for what?" Molvith asked. "For us. For anyone curious enough to look." Dr. Yoon smiled at the memory. "The architects built the hyperlanes that connect your empire. They created the fold space technology that allows travel between stars. They were old when your ancestors were young. And then they vanished, millions of years ago. But they left behind teachers, knowledge, gifts for anyone brave enough to find them. And they gave these gifts to humans? Why humans?" Dr. Yoon looked at him with eyes that held depths he could not measure. "Because we asked the right questions. Because we were not afraid to learn. Because we are human, Chief Examiner. And humans have always reached for things beyond their grasp." Molvith returned to the imperial capital that night and locked himself in his laboratory. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He simply sat in the darkness and tried to understand what he had seen. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had conquered hundreds of species. They had built wonders that lesser beings called magic. But in one day, a ship full of humans had shown him technology that made the Empire look like children playing with stones. He sent his report to Emperor Veshal with trembling hands. The humans were no longer servants. The humans were no longer weak. The humans had become something the galaxy had never seen before, and Molvith knew, with terrible certainty, that the Empire would try to destroy them for it. The Imperial Council chamber was filled with representatives from every major species in the Dominion. They came from worlds across the galaxy, beings of every shape and size, all of them loyal servants of Emperor Vessal. And all of them were terrified. The Emperor himself sat on a throne made of living crystal. He was ancient beyond counting, a creature of scales and shadow who had ruled for 3,000 years. His eyes glowed with cold intelligence as he listened to Mulvith's report. "So," Vexal said when the chief examiner finished speaking, "the humans have become gods." "Not gods, Your Majesty," Mulvith replied carefully, "but close enough that the difference does not matter." The chamber erupted in shouting. Representatives screamed at each other, blamed each other, demanded action. The Vorthax delegation called for immediate destruction of the human vessel. The Malari suggested surrender. The Korvax said nothing at all, simply watching with their cold insect eyes. One voice cut through the noise. It belonged to Counselor Yim-Su Bin, the human representative to the Imperial Council. She was a middle-aged woman with silver streaks in her black hair and a face that showed nothing of what she felt inside. "Perhaps," she said calmly, "we should speak with the returned humans before we decide to destroy them." The Emperor turned his ancient eyes toward her. "You speak for your species, Counselor. Do you claim these returnees as your people?" Su Bin chose her words carefully. She had survived in imperial politics for 30 years by knowing exactly what to say and what to hide. "I claim nothing, Your Majesty. I simply suggest caution. If these humans are as powerful as Chief Examiner Mulvith reports, then attacking them would be foolish." "Foolish?" The Vorthax ambassador rose from his seat, his forearms waving with anger. "The humans are servants. They exist to serve the Dominion. Now you tell us they have power beyond our understanding, and you ask for caution? They must be destroyed before they threaten everything we have built." While the council argued, Admiral Kan Taesung sat alone in his quarters aboard his warship. He had not slept since meeting the crew of the Dawn of Korea. His mind kept returning to the old man, who claimed to be his ancestor, to the young captain with stars in her eyes, to the children who played in gardens that existed outside normal space. A message arrived on his personal terminal. It was marked as classified, sent from a source inside the Imperial Archives. Taesung did not know who sent it, but when he read the contents, his blood turned cold. The files were 800 years old. From the time when the Empire first conquered Earth, they contained records of human achievements before the conquest. Space travel developed in less than a century. Computing technology that doubled in power every few years. Medical advances that extended human life. Weapons that could crack planets down, and then came the orders. Imperial orders to suppress human development, to limit human education, to ensure that humans never again advanced beyond what the Empire allowed. The conquest of Earth had not been about resources or territory. It had been about fear. The Empire was afraid of what humans might become. Taesung closed the files and sat in darkness. Everything he had believed about his place in the galaxy was a lie. Humans were not servants because they were weak. They were servants because the Empire made sure they stayed weak. He thought of his grandmother, who had died believing she was born to serve. He thought of his parents, who had worked themselves to death in imperial factories. He thought of every human who had ever bowed to an alien master, believing they had no choice. And for the first time in his life, Kan Taesung felt rage. Emperor Vexal made his decision that night. He would not attack the human vessel openly. That would be too risky if the reports about their power were true. Instead, he would use deception. He invited Captain Park Hana to a diplomatic reception at the Imperial Palace. It would be a celebration of the returned explorers, he said. A chance to welcome them back to the galactic community. Hana accepted the invitation gracefully. The reception was beautiful. The palace glowed with lights from 1,000 worlds. Music played. Rare foods were served. Hundreds of the Empire's most powerful beings gathered to meet the human captain who had returned from the dead. Hana arrived alone, wearing a simple dress of white fabric that seemed to glow with its own light. She smiled at everyone, shook hands with aliens who had spent their lives looking down on her species, and moved through the crowd like water flowing through stones. Vexal watched her from his throne. He gave the signal. The attack came from every direction at once. Energy weapons hidden in the walls fired beams that could cut through starship armor. Assassins from the Shadow Guild appeared from thin air, their poison blades aimed at Hana's heart. The floor opened to release combat robots armed with every weapon the Empire had ever created. The guests screamed and fled. The palace guards formed a wall around the Emperor. Every weapon in the room focused on the single human woman standing in the center of the chaos. Ha-na did not move. The energy beams stopped inches from her skin, held in place by invisible force. The assassins found themselves frozen mid-strike, unable to move even their eyes. The combat robots simply fell apart. Their circuits turned to dust. Hana looked at Emperor Vexal with an expression that held no anger, no fear, only a deep and terrible sadness. "We knew you would try this," she said softly. "We hoped you would not. We wanted to believe that the galaxy could welcome us home without violence." She walked toward the throne, stepping over frozen assassins and broken robots. "I have lived for 300 years, Emperor. I have seen wonders you cannot imagine. I have touched the edge of infinity and returned changed. And in all that time, I have learned one simple truth." She stopped at the base of his throne and looked up at the ancient ruler who had enslaved her people for 8 centuries. "Power is not about destruction," Hana said. "It is about choice. You chose to attack us. That was your right. Now I choose to spare you. That is my right." She smiled gently. "We are not your enemies, Emperor. We never were, but we are no longer your servants either." She turned and walked out of the palace. No one stopped her. No one could. And Emperor Vexal, for the first time in 3,000 years, knew what it felt like to be afraid. The meeting took place aboard the Dawn of Korea, in a chamber that looked like an ancient Korean temple. Wooden beams stretched overhead, and paper lanterns cast soft light across the floor. Admiral Tae-sung sat with Counselor Su-bin on one side. Captain Hana, Elder Kim Dong-ho, and Dr. Young-ji-woo sat on the other. "You have seen the archives," Hana said. It was not a question. Tae-sung nodded slowly. "The Empire conquered Earth because they were afraid of us. They kept us weak on purpose. Yes, for 800 years, they watched us. Any human who showed too much intelligence was taken away. Any invention that seemed too advanced was destroyed. They built a cage around our entire species and called it civilization." Su-bin leaned forward. "Why did you come back? You could have stayed in the void forever. You could have built your own civilization far from the Empire. Why return to this place that treated us so badly?" Elder Dong-ho smiled, his old face wrinkled with warmth and memory. "Because Earth is our home. Because our brothers and sisters still live under the Empire's rule. Because the architects taught us that knowledge means nothing if you do not share it." Dr. Yoon stood and walked to the center of the room. She raised her hands, and the air above them filled with light. Images appeared, floating like ghosts made of stars. "Let me tell you about the architects," she said. "The images show beings of light and shadow, vast intelligences that had existed when the galaxy was young. They had built the hyperlanes that connected the stars. They had created fold space travel. They had seeded hundreds of worlds with the building blocks of life. They were the first great civilization," Yoon explained. "They ruled the galaxy for 1 billion years. But eventually, they faced a choice. They could stay as they were, powerful but unchanging. or they could evolve into something new, something beyond physical form. The images shifted to show the architects changing, their bodies dissolving into pure energy, their minds expanding until they touched the edges of the universe itself. Most of them chose to evolve. They left behind their technology, their knowledge, their wisdom. They placed it in the void, hidden from the young species who were not ready to find it. And then they waited. Waited for what? Taesung asked. For someone curious enough to look. For someone brave enough to enter the darkness. For someone who asked questions instead of accepting easy answers. Yoon smiled at the memory. They waited for humans. Hana continued the story. When we entered the void, we were lost. Our ship was damaged. Our supplies were running low. We thought we would die in the darkness. But then we found the first beacon. The images showed the dawn of Korea approaching a structure of impossible size, a ring of crystal and light floating in empty space. The beacon scanned us. It looked into our minds, our hearts, our history. It saw everything we had ever been and everything we might become. And then it spoke to us. What did it say? Su Bin whispered. It said, "Welcome, children. We have been waiting for you. Would you like to learn?" The chamber fell silent. Outside the temple walls, the endless gardens of the dawn stretched into distances that made no sense. Children's laughter echoed from somewhere far away. "We spent 300 years learning," Dr. Yoon said. "We made mistakes. We grew frustrated. Sometimes we wanted to give up. But the architects were patient teachers. They showed us how to fold space, how to touch time, how to reshape matter with thought alone. They taught us things that the Empire never imagined possible. And in return," Taesung asked, "what did they want from you?" "Nothing." Hana's voice was gentle. "They gave freely, because that is what teachers do. They asked only one thing, that when we were ready, we return to the galaxy and offer the same gift to others." Elder Dongho rose from his seat, his old joints creaking. He walked to a window and looked out at the stars. The Empire rules through fear and control. They keep species small and weak so they can be easily managed. But that is not the only way to build a civilization. He turned back to face them. The architects built a galaxy of wonders by sharing knowledge freely. They lifted every species they met. They believed that the universe grows richer when everyone grows together. Taesung thought about everything he had seen and heard. The Empire had kept humans in chains for 800 years. Now his own people had returned with the power to break those chains forever. What happens now? He asked. Hana stood and walked to stand beside Dong Ho at the window. The light of distant stars reflected in her eyes. "We offer a choice. To the Empire. To every species in the galaxy. Learn with us. Grow with us. Become more than you are." She paused. "Or refuse and stay as you are. We will not force anyone. That is not the way of the architects. And if the Empire attacks you instead, what then?" Hana turned to face him. Her expression held no anger, no fear, only calm certainty. "The dawn of Korea is not alone, Admiral. 12 more ships wait in fold space, each one built for a different purpose. We have vessels that can heal entire planets. We have ships that can restore dead ecosystems. We have technology that could feed every hungry person in the galaxy." She smiled softly. "We also have the power to end wars, permanently, without a single death. We do not want to use force," Dong Ho added. "But we will protect ourselves. And we will protect humanity. That is not a threat, Admiral. It is a promise." The meeting ended with no clear resolution. Taesung and Su Bin returned to their posts, carrying secrets that could shake the foundation of everything they knew. But as his shuttle carried him away from the dawn of Korea, Taesung looked back at the crystal-covered ship and felt something he had not felt in years, Hope. The servants were no longer servants. The weak were no longer weak. And the galaxy, whether it was ready or not, was about to change forever. Emperor Vex'al's order went out to every corner of the Dominion. Every warship, every battle station, every weapon the Empire possessed was called to the capital. For 3 days, the sky above the throne world darkened with the shadows of 10,000 vessels. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. The Emperor stood before his council one final time. His ancient eyes burned with fury that had festered for days since his failed assassination attempt. "The humans think themselves our equals," he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "They think their parlor tricks and stolen technology make them powerful. Today, we remind them what true power looks like. Today, we burn their ship from the sky and scatter their ashes across the void." No one in the council dared to disagree. Not even Counselor Su Bin, who sat with her hands folded and her face carefully blank. She had sent a secret message to the Dawn of Korea hours ago. She had done everything she could. Now she could only watch and pray. The Imperial Armada moved toward the Dawn of Korea in perfect formation. 10,000 ships of every size and design, carrying weapons that could crack moons and shatter planets. At the front flew the Emperor's own flagship, a vessel 3 kilometers long, bristling with cannons that had ended civilizations. Captain Hana watched them come from the bridge of her ship. Beside her stood Commander Baek Junho, her husband, who had commanded the hidden fleet for over a century. His face was calm, but his eyes held the cold focus of a warrior prepared for battle. 12 ships against 10,000, Junho said quietly. "The odds are almost unfair." Hana smiled. "Yes, perhaps we should give them more time to gather reinforcements. That would be cruel." "You are right. Let us end this quickly." She raised her hand and spoke a single word in a language older than the Empire itself. The fold space gates opened. 12 ships emerged from nothing, appearing around the Dawn of Korea like jewels arranged on silk. Each one was different. One burned with eternal fire. Another seemed made of living water. A third existed only as a shadow against the stars, visible yet untouchable. Admiral Taesoon watched from his own ship, which he had positioned far from the main fleet. He had refused the Emperor's order to join the attack. He had removed his imperial insignia and broadcast a message to every human in the Dominion. Watch closely. This is the day everything changes. The battle began. 10,000 Imperial ships opened fire at once. The sky turned white with energy beams and missiles and plasma bursts. Enough firepower to sterilize a planet struck the 13 human vessels in a storm of destruction. When the light faded, the human ships were untouched. They had not moved. They had not raised shields. They had simply existed in a state that weapons could not affect. The Imperial barge had passed through them, like light through glass dot. Then the human ships began to move. They danced through the Imperial formation like wind through leaves. They did not fire weapons. They did not ram or strike or destroy. They simply passed by each Imperial vessel, close enough to touch, and as they passed, systems failed. Weapons went silent. Engines died. Lights flickered and vanished. One by one, 10,000 warships became dark and cold, drifting helplessly in the void. Not a single soldier was harmed. Not a single life was lost. But in 4 minutes, the greatest fleet in galactic history was reduced to floating metal. Emperor Vex'al stood on the bridge of his powerless flagship, watching his empire crumble around him. When the Dawn of Korea matched position with his vessel, when the airlock opened and Captain Park Hana walked aboard alone, he faced her with all the dignity he could gather. "You could have destroyed us," he said. "Why did you not?" Hana looked at the ancient emperor with eyes that held no hatred. "Because destruction teaches nothing. Because killing you would not undo 800 years of suffering. Because we are human, Your Majesty, and we have learned that true strength is not measured in what you can destroy, but in what you can build. What do you want from me? Choice. Hana stepped closer. You can accept what has happened. You can work with us to build a better galaxy. We will teach your people what the architects taught us. We will lift every species in your dominion to heights they never dreamed possible. In 1 generation, there will be no more hunger, no more disease, no more war. Is that not worth more than your pride? Vexal was silent for a long moment. 3,000 years of rule weighed on his ancient shoulders. Everything he had built, everything he had believed, lay broken around him. And if I refuse? Then we leave you here, in your dead ship, with your dead empire, and we offer our gifts to those who will accept them. You will not be harmed. You will simply be forgotten. The Emperor closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they held something Hana had not expected. Relief. I am tired, he said quietly. I have ruled for too long. Take your gifts. Spread your knowledge. Build your better galaxy. He turned away from her and walked toward his private chambers. I will not help you, but I will not stop you either. That is the best I can offer. It is enough. 1 week later, Admiral Kan Taisung stood on the balcony of the Imperial Palace, broadcasting to every world in the galaxy. He wore no uniform. He carried no weapons. He was simply a man, speaking to other beings across the stars. My name is Kan Taisung. I am human. For 800 years, my people were called servants. We were told we were small, weak, meant to bow before greater species. That was a lie. He looked up at the sky, where the dawn of Korea hung like a new star. Today, we offer a gift to every being in the galaxy. Knowledge, growth, the chance to become more than you ever believed possible. We ask nothing in return except that you share what you learn with others. This is the way of the architects. This is now the way of humanity. Across the galaxy, beings of every species watched and listened. Some were afraid. Some were skeptical. But many, so many, felt something stir in their hearts. Hope, curiosity, the ancient hunger to reach beyond the known and touch something greater on Earth. In a small village in Korea, Dr. Yoon Ji-woo stood in a garden that her grandmother had planted 300 years ago. The flowers still bloomed. The trees still grew. And for the first time in 8 centuries, humans walked freely under their own sky. She closed her eyes and whispered an old proverb. Her mother had taught her, even if the sky falls, there is a hole to escape through. High above, the dawn of Korea turned toward the stars. There was more to learn, more to teach, more to become. The servants had come home, and they had brought the light of 1 billion stars with them. In the end, the galaxy did not fall. It rose. And humanity, after all its long years of darkness, finally walked among the stars as equals. Not conquerors, not servants, simply humans doing what humans had always done best, reaching for the impossible and making it real.